feel free to continue with your lunch, but in the interest of time, we're going to get going with the lunchtime proceedings. My name is Robert Jall, and I'm the president of UDI Capital Region. I would like to welcome you all to our June lunch. We're very pleased today to have Bob Rennie joining us of Rennie Marketing Systems, undoubtedly one of the most popular speakers on our annual lunchtime speaker series. Before Bob's formal introduction, I would like to first introduce the other UDI Capital Region board members in attendance today. Keith Barbone from KUB Developments, Dave Chard, Chard Developments, Cam Cooper from Cooper Pacific, Charles Caroth from DeHoog and Caroth Architects, Mike Miller, Abstract Developments, Sarah Pope from Reed Pope, Anna Schnell from Colliers, Henry Kampoff from the CRD, Bob Pierce from Town Line, and Bill Patterson from the Civic Group. Thank you for attending. I would also like to introduce the Executive Director of UDI Capital Region, Kathy Hogan, whose tireless efforts are what makes these events possible. So thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
And now on behalf of Kathy and the board, I would also like to express our gratitude to UDI Capital Region's annual sponsors, Fortis BC and Bank of Montreal. Very quickly on the administrative side of things, I'd like to let you know about a couple of upcoming UDI events. On the lunch side, our next lunch is September 11th, where we have John Stovell from Reliance Properties coming to give us an update on his plans for the redevelopment of the Janyan buildings and the Northern Junk sites. On October 9th, we'll have Fortis BC coming to give us an update on things in their world. And on November 13th, we'll have the Langford Mayor, Stu Young, coming to give us an update on recent activities in the West Shore. Other upcoming events include a summer social event for all members, as well as a fall development tour in the Capital Region. Dates of those events are still being finalized, but Kathy will send out the particulars to all members as soon as they're confirmed. Now on to today's luncheon topic, perspectives and insights on the residential real estate market from Bob Rennie, President of UDI Rennie Marketing Systems. Bob, as many of you know, is one of the foremost thought leaders on residential property in the province, and speaking for myself personally, I tremendously value his insights on the present and future trends in the property markets, not to mention his perspectives and authoritative opinions on politics and art. Our lunch today has been generously sponsored by Chard Developments and DeHoog and Caroth Architects, and I would like to welcome Dave Chard from Chard Developments to formally introduce today's speaker.
Thank you, Robert. I have to really lower the microphone down now. It's my pleasure to introduce Bob Rennie. Bob is an icon in the condo business in British Columbia, and I can probably say icon in Canada. If anyone's looking for thinking of developing a condo, they're going to come to Bob and ask for his expertise and discuss the sales program with him. In Vancouver, he's done all of the major downtown projects and projects now out in the urban area. Bob is really, I looked at his bio, he's been in business for 38 years, and I've been in the business about the same length of time, and I look at Bob and I look at myself in the mirror and I go, holy jeez, it looks like it's a lot easier being a condo seller than it is a developer. So, and he's cool, you know, he wears his running shoes and I wear just ordinary old shoes. So it's great to have Bob here. Bob is also an icon in the Vancouver market with his arts. He has his own museum that is open a couple of days a week. He is on boards of different boards around the arts community. So he's not only a great seller of condos, he's a lover of art and likes to allow other people to come and see it. So I think that's really a tremendous attribute. I'd like to just also recognize that, as Robert said, we are the sponsors, Chard Development of today's lunch, along with Charles Kiroff and Peter DeHoog, and we very much appreciate having that opportunity. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Bob, and I think Bob is a very entertaining speaker for those who have heard him before. We heard him at the UDI function in Vancouver a few weeks ago, and really was very insightful on where the market is being and where the market is going. So look forward to hearing from Bob again today. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I just want to get the thing, obviously, to Dave and to the whole, and Carol, thank you for sponsoring this. What I was going to do is primarily go through the talk that I gave in Vancouver. I don't think I can become an instant authority on Vancouver Island or your local market and gather the statistics that you would need. I think that's available to you. So hopefully, as I go through the demographics and aging populations and first-time buyers or empty nesters, that you can find some parallels that you can relate to your market. I was fortunate enough when I spoke at the UDI on May the 16th that the provincial election was just 2 days before, and it all went our way. Hopefully, most of them, it all went my way. But Premier Christy Clark was kind enough to come out and thank myself and Peter Wall. There wasn't a lot of us that could drive 2 horses. We were out there front and center. I think what happened is most Liberal voters were predicting it was going to be the NDP, and it almost looked like it was going to become a self-fulfilling wish. But Christy said something up on stage that the audience didn't fully get, and Christy said, well, when Bob and I woke up this morning, and where that came from, when I was here last year, somebody in the audience had asked a couple questions about Christy, and then somebody asked another one, and I was looking like the bad guy. I eat the same restaurant probably 4 days a week, and walking through the restaurant, everybody was blaming me for this disaster of Christy, and what I found was people would tell me it was going to be Adrian Dix, I said, what were you voting for? And they would say, well, I'm a Liberal. And so it was almost the Liberals were causing this to happen. But when Christy got up and repeated that same, when Bob and I got up this morning, that came from this room, because when somebody asked me a question last year, I just wanted to stop the Christy talk, and I said, well, when we got up this morning, but then I had to leave here and phone Christy right away, and let her know that I'd thrown her under the bus a little bit, that I pretended we were in a relationship. We are in a relationship, but it's a political relationship. I'm a pretty happy guy, and now that the Liberals have a majority, I think that we can all help them move on to get the things that we need done. On the property marketing side, the real estate development marketing act has huge flaws in it. It's tipped too much to the consumer. So Dan Doyle, who's chief of staff, is going to get together with Brian to get your. So I'm really happy to be here. Sorry. Probably easier. I can't make this work, and I can't hold it. So the Real Estate Development Marketing Act, Dan Doyle, who's Chief of Staff to Premier Christy Clark, is going to get together with Brian McCauley, who's President of UDI over in Vancouver, and with Neil Crystal and Rosanna Kotis, who's probably been hurt most by the Real Estate Development Marketing Act, and we're going to see some changes come through. Because my worry was that the Real Estate Development Marketing Act, that soon the banks weren't going to honor pre-sale contracts, because it's tipped too far side to the consumer, and people can get out for frivolous reasons, that we weren't going to be in the pre-sale business anymore. So that was said during the election, it was going to be looked at, and I think on the 21st of June or so, we're meeting with them. We'll make those changes. Okay, so now I'll get into my talk. One of the things that I mentioned when I spoke at the UDI last month was that one of the reasons Vancouver really works and became an urban livable city is Mayor Art Phillips didn't allow freeways to go through the city, and I think not having freeways go through Vancouver gave me a career, and it made it a highly livable city. So everything that's happened in Vancouver was planned on a long time ago, and what I find is in cities like Portland is work now, that you went to other small cities and they just want to try one tower, and then they find it doesn't work. Well, you have to plan on it. You have to plan on that infrastructure. You have to plan on the ground plan on the retail, so that it's highly livable. So the title of today's talk, I don't know if you all have a card. front of you, is Reset. And where the name Reset came from is, my son runs the company, and we're trying to get more infrastructure in the company. We have a new vice president, and we hired Cassette Marketing to come and look at our company and interview all 29 employees that at the time they go through how we were going to grow. Not the 90 brokers on the Rennie Associate side, but just the Rennie Marketing Systems side. And it took them about 6 months. They interviewed everybody, and they got together with me, and they wanted to discuss their findings and lay out a path for growth. And they went through it for about a half an hour. I sort of put my hands in my head, and I said, I don't want to grow. I want to grow up. And I think it's what a lot of us should be doing with our developments, we should be doing with our own companies, is instead of just constantly looking for this expansion and to move on, really understand what you're doing, start to really ask the tough questions, and we should all learn to grow up. And that sort of gave me the groundwork for the talk that I did last month and that I'm doing here. And I find that we don't ask ourselves the tough questions, and I find that we just pay attention to the low-hanging fruit, and we really pay attention to rhetoric. And something that was in the Vancouver Sun a few months ago was rhetoric times 2 does not equal data. So I'm a big fan of data and statistics, and let's have the information to back up our decisions. They don't need the information to back up why something's even working. Let's understand why it's working. It wasn't just luck. So in preparing sort of our annual talk, we did 2 surveys within Rennie Marketing Systems. First one went out to 1,120 recent closings that we've had over the last 9 months, and the other went out to a database, and we had an unprecedented response. We had 3,600 responders, so we felt that we gathered some really amazing purchaser demographic, because those 3,600 haven't bought yet. So it gave us some great insight into gender, into age, into parking, etc. And the way that we get a response like that is we give away iPads. We give away iPads in our office like candy. we went out, and I think we gave away 5 iPads and 5 iPhones, and it really peaks the responder rate. So, the sources that we'll go through today, I rely on census data, for income and population, and then all of my other data is compiled by Urban Futures, which is David Baxter and Andy Brownlow, and then Sandra Cawley of Burgess Cawley Sullivan, because I find it's not good enough for me to get up and really have conviction and believe in what I'm talking about. I need an outside source to do it. But if you start to look at some of the data out there, in Greater Vancouver, our population will increase by 23.88% by 2027. So over the next 15 years, taking our Greater Vancouver population from 2.3 million today to just over 3 million. And the other thing is you don't need to take notes, because all of this is already online with the UDI in Vancouver, and Kathy just said that she's going to put that same talk, which will have expanded statistics up online on the website. But I do get very concerned when I see the industry and the media pushing young buyers to the sidelines. It seems that the blog and everybody is really interested to call, print, blog, email, and whisper negative opinion without any data, without any facts, not unlike maybe what we saw going on with Adrian Dix. And I think as you receive data and understand data, that psychiatrists will tell you that once you're conscious, you can't pretend to be unconscious. So once you've received real fact and real information, you can't pretend that it doesn't exist. So I think as an industry, we should try and get a lot of facts out to consumers now, and a lot of facts out to the media. So no matter how desperately we want that old economy of September 2008, when Bear Stearns and even tipped, it's gone. We're not getting it back. The baby boomers, they're not going to cooperate the same way that they did pre-2008. They've changed all of their spending habits. They're very, very conservative now. And then we rely on a statement that was made by Daniel Patrick Monahan, who is a member of the Kennedy administration. And what it is everybody is entitled to their own opinions, but we're not entitled to our own facts. And so I'm really trying to move my UDI board and all of us along that let's stop with the low-hanging fruit and stop just throwing out frivolous statements that cause misinformation, and let's gather facts. Let's have your UDI come up with hard facts so that everybody's telling the same story. I can parallel it to politics. The reason Christie got in is whether she was on Vancouver Island, whether she was in Prince George or in Vancouver, she said it's about the economy. Dix, wherever he was, he changed the story to suit the town he was in, and everybody said, gee, I can't add it up. But if you've got consistency, you've got facts, it's very easy to sway public opinion. So some of the facts that affect you and that affects Greater Vancouver is for British Columbia, only 4.9% of our population earn over $100,000 a year. That's only 0.6% of our population in British Columbia. And 0.6% of the 4.9% earn over $250,000 a year. And there's only 21,000 people in British Columbia, and most of them I guess are in this room, that are earning over $250,000 a year. And that demographic that you're after here on Vancouver Island in Alberta has exactly 100% more, double of that demographic than we do. But that 4.9% that earn over 100 a year represent 26% of the income earned in our province, and they're responsible for 44% of the taxes that are brought in by the province. And 65%, this is why we were talking that we have to look at affordability, 65% of the population of British Columbia earn less than $50,000 a year. So you wonder why we get that tag, not only Vancouver, but British Columbia as the most expensive place to live on earth. Because if you look at it solely based on incomes, and 65% of us are earning less than $50,000 a year, if all this real estate activity was just based on incomes, we are the most expensive place to live on earth. But I'll go through proving out that we're not. I've just got here again, but as I go through some Vancouver statistics, try and parallel them to what you're doing over here, whether you're looking at affordability or whether you're looking at Dave's penthouse. But we're doing a project in Vancouver, transit-oriented right now, Wall Central Park. We've sold 333 homes in the past 7 weeks, and it satisfies that 65% demographic because 370 of the homes are priced under $299,000. On transit, the most easterly part of Vancouver at Boundary and Kingsway, but for the under $299,000, you need a household income of $46,000 a year. So we deliberately went out, once we found that stat last year, and designed the product just to fit in with that statistic. And what we found with marketing 370 homes under $299,000 is we brought out a buyer that wants to stay in the community, they want to be close to family, they want the aging place, and they want to they want to help their kids get in, which is no different than Victoria, Vancouver Island, or what's going on in Vancouver. Those same principles exist. What we found was 47% of our buyers came from the neighboring 5 postal codes. And their jobs, casino workers, nannies, Home Depot clerks, policemen, it wasn't China. The media will tell you it's all investors. The media will convince us that locals can't buy, and I'll break down the numbers further later. But the fact that it's transit-oriented and the fact that it's under $299,000, that doesn't explain the rest of the market, and it doesn't explain why the Feds, Flaherty, and the banks are having a really hard time understanding my Greater Vancouver market. Because just because your income fits the $50,000, where are you getting the $75,000? Where are you getting the 25% down to close on? Where are the 20% deposits coming from? So I'll wander around a bit, and then I'll get back to that. But getting to understand Vancouver a bit, we have to reset our thinking now that we know that less than 5% of us earn over $100,000, and that 65% of us earning under 50. And I could choose anything, but the topic that I picked was the Vancouver Art Gallery. I've been in a constant fuse with the Vancouver Art Gallery. Once they've been given this 2-year extension, we raised $350 million. I decided to shut up, but it does come with real reasons. is, Vancouver doesn't have an opera house like Sydney. We don't have museums like New York. We don't have a center like Lincoln Center in New York. And yet you have to reset your thinking when you're going after philanthropy, whether you're here or whether you're in Vancouver, that for every one person earning over $250,000, there's 110 earning less than $50,000. And in Vancouver, we found that to save a community, maybe not unlike the John Stabell building that he's going to do, but the Waldorf Hotel in Vancouver, 22,000 people signed a petition to keep in the Waldorf Hotel just outside of the downtown east side, to keep affordable restaurants and bands and a venue that's open at night and has really become a gathering place for youth. But then when you look at a $500 million Vancouver Art Gallery and you add in the land, they had 300 to 400 people sign a petition. And you really start to see where these demographics split out and who this room should be paying attention to when we start to look at our buying public. And then I had a bit of a breakthrough, and I was having lunch at the Four Seasons with Laura Klauberg. And Laura Klauberg, 2 months ago, is the Senior Vice President of Brand and Community for Lululemon. And I believe that what the story we're talking about, Laura, applies to your region also, is our lunch talk really centered around that Laura had recently moved here from Connecticut to take on the big job with Lululemon. She was commenting on our arts and cultural scene in Vancouver. And then it sort of hit me the fact that Laura rode her bike to lunch from the Kitsilano area in Vancouver, Lululemon's offices, over to the Four Seasons. And it sort of helped me put together why we don't have these big city venues, this architecture, and the big box public institutions. Because aside from Vancouver not being a head office city, we're not Canada's financial center, and we clearly just don't have that demographic of any depth with the discretionary income. What keeps Toronto going, what keeps Calgary going, what keeps New York and San Francisco and the Chicagos of the world going, is that $250,000 to $700,000 a year earner. We have entrepreneurs, you have entrepreneurs here that earn that sort of money, but you don't have that demographic, that discretionary money that buys cars and buys houses and just keeps the downtown alive. You don't have it, and we don't have it either. But what I heard from Laura is when you live in Vancouver or when you live on Vancouver Island, when you arrive home on a Friday afternoon, and you might think it would be nice to go to the symphony or to go to the opera or to go to a Broadway play or more activities coming to town. And all of a sudden you find that you're in your Lululemons, you find yourself on a bike, Vancouver, you're out on the seawall, wherever you'd be walking outside of Victoria, you're not in your car, because our cultural activity takes place outside. And we're very happy to have that as our cultural activity. And you forget that you don't need all of that elaborate infrastructure because you're happy living outside. And in British Columbia, we're entertained naturally. And I think we have to plug that in when we're thinking of amenities that we need in our building, when we're thinking of what public amenities should be going in our neighborhoods. It's going to be bite-sized, it's going to be more community-driven than the big box, really expensive to maintain. So what I came up with from that talk with Laura was that I think I have to reset everything I realized about philanthropy, and especially philanthropy in Vancouver, not being a head office city. Phil Lynn, who is, I guess, the largest shareholder after the Rogers family and Rogers. I was in Toronto in the past 3 weeks doing a talk with Matthew Tidybaum, the head of the Art Gallery of Ontario, and myself, just on collecting. Phil Lynn had me to his house for dinner, and he had 18 people in the dining room, that gives you an idea of the size of the condo. And before ass hit the chair, somebody at the table said, "So tell me about your politics and tell me about this Vancouver Art Gallery." And I explained that I didn't want to insult my host, because he's on the board of the Vancouver Art Gallery, and nobody in the room believed me when I said that Christy would do this. But the problem is that 18 people in the room, they wouldn't be in the room if they weren't contributing philanthropically. If they weren't part of the arts and cultural scene of Toronto, you'd be shunned. In Vancouver, you're not shunned for not participating in arts and culture. The badging, Vancouver is you have a box that connects. It's just a completely different culture, and I'm trying to put together why Vancouver is different and how we should cater to our buyers differently. Whether it's Victoria or whether it's Vancouver, I think that what will happen with your arts and culture is the newcomer is going to be the one that ensures some sort of arts and culture. You know, Vancouver right now, 40% of the population is Asian, 28% of the population of Greater Vancouver is Asian. The only way you're going to get those populations involved in buying real estate or in arts and culture is do something that they like. And then they will start to maybe understand what you like. But we can't just stand up and say, come and like what I like and give me money. You have to do something that they like on both sides of the equation. So it's been a real eye-opener, and I think philanthropy has to change. I think cultural engagement with your buyers will have to change, and the newcomers, the cities are going to demand what they've given up, and they will participate. So, and then when you also look at fundraising, I believe that you're going through the Royal BC Museum is going to be rebuilt, and it's going through a big addition. And yes, we have the province, but they're going to need federal money. But what you have to look at who's the federal money going to pay attention to? The 4.9% earning up over 100,000, or the 65%, a lot of votes, the people that are earning over 50,000. So when politicians want the financial support of the 4.9% earning over 100,000, but they really want the votes of the 65% that are earning less than 50,000. So when you think about Greater Vancouver, when it comes to whether it's the Vancouver Art Gallery, the homeless, maintaining Stanley Park, or affordable rental, the Olympics, policing, firemen, the convention center, a lot of these things are regional issues. And I think the brand is Vancouver, the brand is Greater Vancouver, it's not Greater Meadows. Vancouver is the franchise. But I think we have to understand that it's going to cost more money to do business in Vancouver. It may cost more money to do business in Victoria than it's going to be up island, because you're also carrying some of the weight of your region, being the big city. Recently there was an ad in the Vancouver Sun, or an article in the Vancouver Sun that was crying foul that Vancouver charges developers far more than surrounding cities, referring to the fact that Vancouver's fees are a lot higher than Burnaby's or the Surrey's. And the story highlighted in Surrey City Centre, in order to stimulate development, bonus density fees have been waived. That brought CECs down. The cost of density is almost free to stimulate development. And I'll go through in a few minutes what the problem with that is. And I tried to pick a parallel with my little knowledge of Vancouver Island, what that would be. And I think Bear Mountain would be similar, where all that density was created, and maybe it's too much density. How are you possibly going to absorb it? And you're also doing it at the expense of all other surrounding cities and municipalities. So I think we have to watch when we're going for more and more and more. I think that Vancouver carries the weight of the region, but Vancouver is only 603,000 people, yet it carries the flag for the region of 2.3 million people. We may be the third largest region in Canada, but Vancouver is only the 8th largest city in Canada, trailing very close behind is Surrey at over 500,000 people. Already Winnipeg is number 7. So that big brand of Vancouver, when you start to scratch the surface, is only 603,000 people. And I think we have to really be conscious of punching above our weight in Vancouver and trying to supply things for the region, yet acting totally independent. It is a valid question to me, is why are we solving homelessness and affordable rental problems of the region on arguably the most expensive land in Canada? As long as the region is letting Vancouver solve the problems, it will cost more money to do business in Vancouver. And maybe this is an education to you guys of why the CACs in Vancouver are so expensive. We're solving regional problems. I was told a story recently by a very prominent developer who's friends with Gordon Campbell. And what Gordon Campbell is now, I always get his job wrong, is the commissioner to the UK. And when Gordon is asked what his previous job was, he used to say Premier of British Columbia. He stopped saying that. What he says, he eventually will say it, but what he says is, I was the mayor of Vancouver. Because when he said Premier of British Columbia, he had to go through a huge explanation of what that meant. But when he says I was the mayor of Vancouver, people just melt and hug him. It is a big world brand. You're Vancouver Island. Vancouver's across the water. It's not that it's better, it just has a spotlight on it, and it has a huge value add by saying Vancouver. I believe that if Diane Watts, who's the mayor of Surrey, is in Hawaii and somebody says where you're from, I think she'll first say Vancouver. And then she'll say, well, 20 minutes outside or an hour outside in traffic, it's Surrey. But I think that that brand carries a lot of strengths, and then it has the weaknesses that it has to live up to what it is. The reality is that Vancouver only represents 1.8% of the population of Canada, and Vancouver only represents 26% of the population of Greater Vancouver. Toronto represents 7.8% of the population of Canada. And I said it last year, and it probably notes were, so I said last year, is just, let's really understand who carries the weight of the region. I don't know whether you can parallel this to Vancouver Island and Victorian, but I have to leave that up to you guys. But this makes sense. Do you have a card? Does everybody have a card on in front of them? So on the card is a piece from a collection, the globe, and it's an 8-foot round globe of the world. Each continent is outlined in red neon. It's really the stats that are on there, but I'm trying to find a way to take some of the creative side of the art and where do I parallel it